Hi everyone and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Intuitive Psychology podcast with me, Jill Ritchie, and the lovely Sarah Gregg, co-host, co-founder of Intuitive Psychology. We're back, season 2, loving it, and we are here with another episode. Sarah, what are we talking about today?
Oh, today is a good one. We are talking about why you need to stop releasing your negative emotions and what you need to do instead.
Now, this is going to throw people because they're like, what do you mean stop releasing my negative emotions? Are you saying we should hold on to the negative emotions? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what I'm saying?
Is it?
Okay, so I think we have kind of been lost a little bit in the word release. Release is such a powerful word, isn't it? We hear it quite frequently. You need to release, you need to let go, you need to surrender. But here's the thing. Release doesn't look like I release it. Right? My anger, it's gone. My sadness, it's gone. This kind of bypassing without the receiving of the emotion. You know, we see this a lot in our work, and it's very, very natural. You know, the students that come to train with us, you know, people that kind of come in, come to join the Intuitive Psychology Association, whether it's like part of the community, whether it's at the events that we're at, there is this desire not to have a particular emotion. So let's look at anger, for example. You know, when we feel angry, when I felt anger, you know, anger about the past, anger about people from my past and maybe what's happened, I don't want to feel that emotion, right? I want to release it. But I want to release it without experiencing it. And I think this is where we're tripping ourselves up a little bit with the word. When your client comes to you or in your own life, like I've just referenced, I don't want to feel that anger. I don't want to process it. I don't want to sit with it. I don't want to be it. I just want to acknowledge it and go, I release you. I release you. Off you go. I don't want you anymore.
Doing like a ceremony. And listen, we're not saying don't do these things. I love a ceremony. I like creating a sacred space. But what we're saying is feeling your emotions are really, really important. How can you seriously let go of something that you've not let come? Right? I'm going to let go of anger. Only you've not actually allowed the anger to come. We can only really move something through and let it fully alchemize when we're allowed ourselves to experience it fully. This is the fear. People don't want to feel it. And I get it. It's not a nice feeling. It isn't a nice feeling. But if you try and create a ceremony or just say, right, okay, I release you, all of that stuff, it's just going to come back, and it's going to come back amplified because you're ignoring it, you're talking over it. We see this a lot. So we do a lot of in-depth training in intuitive psychology, and something that we pick up on is sometimes, and this is always in training, sometimes there's a tendency to, when someone's learning one of our techniques, is to say, okay, and they'll take them into this beautiful space and they'll say, okay, talk to the part. We do a lot of parts work, right? Talk to the part, tell the part, I'm listening to you, and tell the part that it's safe to go now. And what we have a slight issue with is when we're observing this, and the feedback that is quite common when someone is in training with this is that we're not listening though. So we're telling the part, okay, I'm going to talk to anger now. Okay, I'm listening to you, but it's safe to step back now. Well, number one, you're not listening to anger. What does anger have to communicate with you? Because there is something there is an unmet need, or there is an emotion there that wants to communicate and wants to be felt, wants to be seen, heard, understood, but you're not listening to it. You're just talking over it again. And part of that part potentially has been talked over its entire life, and therefore it is stored in the body. It's manifesting in potentially illness, emotional outbursts, physical, mental, emotional. But if we do not actually listen to what that part has to communicate, then how can you possibly release something that you haven't felt? We're not talking about feelings of discomfort. We're talking about anger. So if we're using anger as the example, but we've labeled it as bad. We've labeled anger as bad, right? That's a bad emotion. Therefore, I am bad if I think this way or I feel this way. And that's us in our logical mind. We want to just really come from the neck down, come out of the mind. Now, we're not saying don't use your logical mind. It is so powerful. It's so useful. We need it, tick. But these emotions you're trying to rationalize it in your mind. This isn't for the mind to figure out. This is for you to drop into your intuition, drop into your body, go to that part and breathe and feel that part. What message does that part have for you? And actually, if you can sit with that part and allow enough safety to be created to feel what needs to be felt, it's typically around 90 seconds to 2 minutes for that part to move through. What happens though is we feel it a little bit, we go straight into the mind, and we start judging, and we start trying to direct a story or a movie around it. And then we bypass it and we come out of it. And therefore, that's why sometimes we keep coming back. The feeling keeps coming up and up and up. If the feeling keeps repeatedly coming up, it's just because it needs to be felt. But we've never been taught, Sarah, how to feel and sit with discomfort and uncomfortable emotions.
Definitely. We cannot release what we haven't received. That's the ultimate message. We cannot release what we haven't received. And we have to receive those emotions, first of all. And the irony of all of this is once you allow that emotion just to express and process, it will release itself.
It does.
It will release itself. And we see this time and time again, you know, in the case studies, in our own work, when we just allow what needs to be processed, then it integrates into the wholeness. And it is really difficult. We're not trained to sit with discomfort. Increasingly in our modern society, you know, even the discomfort of maybe being at the airport and waiting for your plane and being in silence, even we go to our phones, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're waiting on something, we've got a bit of time, we're alone with our own thoughts, boom, like let me just devour like the doom scroll. You know, whenever we feel a bit of discomfort, we've had a stressful day, you know, it's like we'll go to food, we'll go to TV, we'll just find a natural way to numb out. You know, we don't know how to hold those emotions. We haven't been taught that. And it's because we label them as bad. There is no judgment. Like they're not good or bad.
But thinking makes it so.
But thinking makes it so.
There is no good or bad. But thinking makes it so. I love that quote.
And what we do is like whenever I've had anger is such a difficult emotion. Like it's such a difficult emotion, I think, to process. And when we have anger, particularly from something in the past, you know, a lot of people, a lot of women, men, especially when they reach the midpoint of their lives, will have an element of anger towards their parents. And that can be really difficult to process. Yeah. That anger, normally it manifests, the first level is the sadness that you didn't get what you needed from them. And then the level and layer deeper down is the anger that you didn't get and need from them. And there's frustration and resentment. But what we layer on top of that is the judgment of it. Yeah. And we judge ourselves for feeling that way. And we tell ourselves we shouldn't feel that way. And we tell ourselves that it needs to release and we need to be free of it because we're scared to go inwards towards it. We're scared that if we sit with those negative emotions, it will somehow reveal to us that we are the bad person that we believe ourselves to be, that it will show the monstrous side of ourselves, that it will show the unlovable side of ourselves, that it will somehow take over our whole being and our whole purpose. And I want to reassure you that if you feel that way, it won't. It will process. It's asking you to feel what you weren't able to feel in the past. Yeah. It's frozen. When we experience those things, that emotion was frozen in time. You know, when you were younger, maybe your parents, caregivers, whatever you have kind of experienced in your own life, which will be completely unique to you, if they weren't able to give you what you needed in that moment, there was anger in that moment as a child. There was frustration. There was sadness, but you couldn't express that. You weren't given the space to express that. It wasn't safe to express that. And so those emotions have been contained and they've been amplified over time as the past is kind of replayed out in your present. And they've built up and built up. But they only ever come into conscious awareness whenever it's time, whenever you're really ready, when the self knows I can hold these emotions now. And the invitation is, how do you receive that first? Yep. And then release it without judgment, but allow it to release itself without spiritual theater, right? Without like, you know, a fakeness around it. Yes, ceremonies, rituals, being in community, wildly important. Breath work, plant medicine, all have a place, right? But not at the expense of bypassing that.
Yeah, and let's talk to that, because the plant medicines, things like that. Now, I've taken plant medicines before. I've shared this on a podcast before. Not loads, but I've done it a few times, and it hasn't agreed with me. And actually, when I sat with it the very last time, I had an adverse effect with it. And the message I got through was, you didn't need that. And it hit me in that moment, actually, we're still outsourcing when we're doing that. And I think sometimes people see things, let's just very quickly talk about that with plant medicine. They see it and they're like, oh, because it's kind of new age and it's like this cool thing to do, and it's plant medicine, so it's not like hard drugs. But actually the impact that it can have on you when you are not coming from a regulated space or safety within yourself can be even more detrimental, I would say, because especially things that are hallucinogenic, they can really mess with your nervous system, your mind. And also people can become addicted to it. They're like, I'm just going to take ayahuasca, I'm just going to take psilocybin, whatever that is. And again, it's that outsourcing of, that is going to give me the answers. That is going to tell me what I need to do next in my life. And actually, breath work, powerful breath work, can get you there too, I believe. But again, here's the thing with breath work. Breath work is incredibly powerful, because it can take you like literally to the point you feel that you're out of your body, and it can release a lot of emotions, and it can unearth a lot of emotions, and you can feel very euphoric, and we know all the science behind it. But if you're doing that on its own, and you're not actually then integrating, and you're not knowing what to do with it afterwards, you just become addicted to breath work. Okay, I feel a certain way, I'm just going to do an immersive breath work session for an hour. Okay, but then what? What do you do after that? Like, when something comes up for you, like, of course you're going to get that dopamine hit. Of course you're going to get that high. I mean, you've absolutely altered state almost, so you're going to feel a certain way. But what happens when that feeling comes back again, that feeling of anger, that feeling of rage? You're going to just keep doing breath work? Or, how do you integrate what you've learned and what you've felt and what you've seen into day-to-day life? And this is why I think coaching at either end of any sort of form of breath work, or even the techniques that we say, and we say this to our students when they're training with us, our techniques are so powerful, Sarah, and we know this to be true, because the evidence of them, what can happen in 20 minutes of doing one of these sessions, is really powerful. But on a standalone, they're nowhere near as powerful unless you know how to integrate them. And that is the work, because if not, you're going to wait and you're thinking, right, okay, that was great. I just want to get addicted to doing breath work, addicted to taking plant medicine. Well, how is that different from any other recreational thing like sex, alcohol, food, all of those things, right? Because you're still outsourcing. It's still a way of not feeling what you want to feel and or what you need to feel to actually move through into your most authentic life.
Integration is key. For as long as humanity has been in existence, we have sought out ways to transcend ordinary consciousness. Ancient tribes, ancient wisdom, all of that have always documented transcendent states. But here's the bit: we can't live in a transcendent state all of the time. And our job is to work with the whole brain, whole body, whole consciousness. And that involves how do I take what I've learned either in breath work, my coaching session, plant medicine, whatever your kind of preferred modality is, or a combination of all of those. How do I take those and bring it back into the real world? How then do I apply the insights that I've learned and bring it into my everyday life? And that's the real work. That is the real work. We can all cultivate a life where we avoid our emotions. But here's the thing, we're ultimately avoiding ourselves. Yeah. And this is what really helped me in my journey. It helped me to really conceptualize what I was doing. Because I think for a while, whenever people were saying, you've got to feel your anger. And I was like, don't really want to. I just want to release it. I just want to surrender. I just want to let go. I just want to say it's safe for you to kind of like move away. And if you're in the coaching space, that's always a temptation for you to do, like with a client. You know, we've kind of shared that when coaches come in and train with us, the temptation is to go, okay, so you've got anger, right? Just tell anger it's like, it's safe to let go. Now here's the bit, and you mentioned this about talking over it. When I started to picture my anger as my inner child, as my like 3-4-year-old self, that little girl needed someone to listen, like needed someone to feel safe to express to. If you had a child or a person kind of in front of you that was saying, I feel anger, and you're just going, no, right, you can leave now. It was like pushing her away. It was pushing her aside. It was literally, when she spoke, it was me kind of like shoving her away and telling her that this wasn't good and she wasn't good enough and that wasn't safe to express, which was the same pattern of behavior from the past. So I felt like I was doing something new. It may feel like you are bringing a level of self-awareness. Oh, I'm aware of my anger, but yeah, then I just told it to leave me, and it did. All we're doing is just pushing and shoving that part of us away. All we're doing is the same thing in a different form and a different system and process. Actually, how can you invite that in? Hi, anger. It's safe for you to be here. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to let you. I'm going to feel where are you in my body. I'm just going to, without word or judgment, without labeling or narrating the experience, I'm just going to allow that sensation just to move through my body.
Yeah.
And when we do that, either for ourselves or if you're in the coaching space or would like to be in the coaching space, when you do that for your client, say without label or judgment, just sit with that.
Sit with it.
Just sit with it. Just be with it. It will be expressed. What needed to be felt back then that couldn't will be felt, and it will process itself in time.
I love it. And actually, when you were talking earlier about the fear of going into it, because, what might come up, you know, that I'm maybe not a good person, that I'm actually alone, that I'm unlovable. You mentioned that earlier, and I want to talk to those parts because we have different techniques, and one that is a really powerful one is unlayering, because actually when we unlayer, we go, right, okay, so we go to the part, and then it's, okay, what's underneath that? And then it's like anger, okay, what's inside anger? It's, you know, it's fear, what's inside fear alone. And when you can drop in, and you and I'm obviously doing this quite quickly, but even taking those pauses, okay, go to alone and allow the client to go to the energy of alone, because they're in their body at this time. You know, we can I just caveat this with, we do a lot of nervous system regulation before. We would never just go straight into this with a client. There's a huge element of nervous system regulation work that is done to allow that client to drop fully into the body. So they're in their body, and it's like we go through each layer, and this is the client's words. The client will then say, it's dark. Okay, go to dark. Be with dark. And you're really holding this potent, powerful space for a client. And the client will be with dark, and they can be visibly upset. Okay, what's inside dark? Anger. Okay, go to anger. Okay, and we can encourage the client to sort of, okay, what do you want to do right now? I want to get really angry. Okay, get angry. And honestly, that process is just a few minutes, but some people have never experienced that in their life, that permission slip to drop in and unlayer each label that they have layered on top of the thing, on top of the thing, on top of the thing. And when I don't think I've ever actually done this with a client where we've got to the bottom and it's went to what's inside that, and then it's love, and okay, what's inside love? It's me.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty, because that client, that person has processed and dropped into each layer, whether that's shame, pain, anger, rage. And ultimately, when all of that's gone, you can see them laugh. Sometimes there's laughter that comes. It's like, well, what's inside that? Me. Okay, what's inside me? Love. What's inside love? Space. What's inside space? Light. What's inside light? Nothing. Yeah. And then the laughter usually comes, because it's like, wow, I just needed to really be held in a space and be your own medicine. And that, all that is we guide, right? And in IP, we guide. You are the person. So if you're the client, you're the one. Your intuition knows where to take you.
It's important to say that, you know, as we kind of describe these techniques that we use, we have an evidence-based way that enables the client to access their intuition. So they're in a state of consciousness where the unconscious is being made conscious. And we have this beautiful wholeness and integration between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind. So these pathways are flowing together, and it's a deeply kind of powerful state to be in, and obviously requires training, space holding. You know, our coaches are accredited to the highest level in the industry, but I think it really does demonstrate like the power of this work and the importance of this work. And as you were talking, what kind of like really came to me was when we were talking about the labels of the emotions, you know, anger is bad. It kind of comes to, you know, how we layer up the story that we tell ourselves, and we like, it's the lies that we tell ourselves, the internalized truth. Anger is bad, which means I am bad. Like we somehow
if
connect.
I'm angry, I'm bad.
Yeah, we connect those two things together. So of course then, like whenever we go inwards, we make those associations, even though as we know as adults, you know, it's not bad and there's healthy anger and all of that stuff. But we go, I feel angry. That's bad. I'm bad. So of course we want to instantly release it. The journey of just being ourselves and holding all emotions, that's whenever you get to combine, that's when real wholeness comes. Whenever I can feel safe to kind of like be with anger, then you create space for kind of the joy. You create safe for the trust. You know, you create space to be so much more of yourself. But most importantly, you're stepping out of that loop of the unconscious running your life. Because if you don't really release anger, and if you just say that you've released it, it's still there. It's still going to manifest, and you're just going to be on this perpetual cycle of being locked in these rituals, routines, exercises that never really kind of get to the root issue. And it's like, choose your heart. You know, either you sit with it and you hold the discomfort, or hey, you dance around it year after year after year after year, convincing yourself that you're more kind of like broken and why can't you get over this thing. It's a process. Learning is a cycle. It is not linear, but we need to stop this. We need to stop this nonsense of like, just release it. First of all, especially if you're in this space, or even if you do this, you know, you're on your own journey, before you ask yourself to release it, I want you to ask yourself, have I received it?
Yeah.
And if you're a coach, I want you to do the same. Before I ask my client to release this, have I allowed them to receive it?
Yeah. And what we're be careful with the receiving part. It's not like your client being upset or emotional or feeling really low about it isn't receiving it. Now they might think, well, I've received it for years. I felt shit about this for years. We're talking about the permission to sit with the direct energy of said emotion. That's the thing. And again, that's what we're talking to here. There's a big difference between feeling low. I felt low for years though, Jill. Yeah, but do you know why? And do you know the root cause? And do you know underneath the root cause, what was the unmet need? That's the part we need to sit with. When we get to the root cause, it's only one part of it. This person might go, well, yeah, this thing happened to me when I was 5. So I know what the root cause is. So what was the unmet need? Yeah. And have you been able to give that to yourself? I needed to be listened to. I needed to feel safe. I needed someone to hold me in that discomfort. You can't go back in time. Sorry, we don't have a time machine, but it's emotion. So what you can do though is, you can't go back in time, but you kind of can in a way to go back to the emotion, right? So you can go back to, well, we don't have a time machine. I'm
not
talking,
in linear
right?
time, but in our minds, we can
go back internally, so we can go back into the part. We can actually sit with it, and we can actually meet that need for ourselves and hear what needed to be heard and feel what needed to be felt. I also don't, just to talk about the sort of plant medicines, I was going to say, I'm not saying we're against plant medicine. It's not for us.
No.
What I feel with that is it can be quite a slippery slope for a lot of vulnerable people, because it seems that unless you're seriously well versed in it, But there's a lot of abuse in plant medicine that I see happening in the world, especially in the online space. And people then are like, well, okay, I want to do that. It's still outsourcing. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you could do this yourself without outsourcing it to another drug?
Agreed.
Like, how amazing is that? Because guess what? The plant medicine may take you to a certain space, but when you go back into the real world, you're still going to continually do the thing that you've done that's made you feel the way you're feeling. You're still going to repeat those maybe toxic patterns in relationships. You're still going to have certain ways of being and showing up in your life. But actually, when you do it a more natural and organic way that's really safe for yourself, the awareness is there and you got there yourself. You didn't need something else to do it for you. And I think that's the point we're trying to talk to here.
Absolutely. This is, you know, the work that we do at the Intuitive Psychology Association is ultimately about helping anyone to stop outsourcing their power to something other than themselves, to come back to the truth of who they are, their own truth, their own lived experience, and to integrate that in a really healthy, helpful way that enacts the change that you want to create in your life. You know, when we have like a peak transcendent experience, it is really hard to integrate that. And actually, a lot of people who offer those experiences offer the experience, but not the integration piece at the end. Yeah. And the integration is key. You know, we train our coaches into like active and applied intuition. So what happens in a session, you know, the client will have this insight, this aha moment, this truth, this awareness, you know, even with the unlayering technique. Oh my goodness, I am love. Like, oh, it's all in me. Like, it's not bad. They have this almost like euphoric experience of like, oh my goodness, like I've never felt this way. But here's the bit, they've got to go back into their everyday life. So it's like, how do I apply that knowledge? How can I now become consciously aware that, I am that love, that I can meet my own needs? Like, how do I know whenever I'm in, how can I apply that insight so that when something happens in my external world that I don't, again, outsource, I don't go back to my familiar, like repeated behaviors, learned behaviors, patterns. How do I make myself aware of the unconscious patterns? You know, Carl Jung famously said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives and we will call it fate. Like, we will just call it fate. We'll feel at the whim of it. And that's what happens with a lot of plant medicine, transcendent experiences. We come back into the ordinary world. We feel great for a few weeks. And then, hey, we're just back in the same cycle. So what do? We go and book ourselves another thing because that made us feel good. Yeah. And actually, when you know how to give yourself those answers and insights, medicine. You are the medicine. Well, it came from you,
of
right?
Course it does.
That transcendent experience, you had something outside of you that facilitated it, but ultimately you were part of that experience. What if you could facilitate that experience for yourself?
Yeah, without taking something that could potentially be really detrimental to you longer term.
Yeah.
I love this. Amazing topic, and I hope it's given the listeners some things to really sit with and contemplate. Yeah, gorgeous, Sarah. Another really great episode. So yeah, if you are interested in learning more about how you can do this for yourself, we do have some free resources. We will drop them in the link in our bio. We have our 22 questions, our 22 question method. It is downloadable for free. You can also visit our website and look at some sort of mini courses that we have, as well as if you are interested in training to become a Master Intuitive Psychology Coach, enrollment is open, and you would need to go through the application process. Sarah and I will have a call with you, but please reach out to us. We'll drop all the links in the show notes, and we'll see you all in the next episode.